Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Wonderful. So welcome to the next in our series on getting along in the Earth world. So let's talk about surviving conventions. Conventions are a very important part of certain aspects of earthen culture. So the first thing you need to understand is the available energy options while at a convention. Earthen energy is very different from the way we use energy in much of the rest of the world. A strange habit of earthens is that they tend to use the most destructive energy possible in the largest quantities possible. In fact, there is some discussion of destroying Earth entirely because, let's face it, sooner or later they're going to destroy themselves. All right, next slide. So let's talk about price. So one of the best ways that you can cut down on costs is by going in a group. It's important to make sure that the people you are going with either know that you are not from Earth or are sufficiently stupid that you can convince them that you are not from Earth, or convince them to hide the fact that you are not from Earth. However, depending on the convention, particularly sci-fi conventions and so forth, you can actually be completely open about the fact that you are not from Earth and no one will believe you anyway. So, let's talk about blending in. You see here some excellent options for clothing that will blend in well in most earthen conventions. However, this type of clothing might be less appropriate in a science fiction or fantasy or medieval recreation type of convention. It would be more appropriate in other types of conventions. It's not quite what earthen called formal enough for a financial type of convention. More on that later. So let's talk about food. Earthens are very peculiar about their food. So you see here this animal. So animals typically are eaten by most earthens. However, generally they prefer to eat it in very specific ways. If you eat it while it is still making noise, that is considered very improper and in poor taste. And they actually have no food that can talk. This is an important point. If it talks, it is not food on Earth. So you'll see here, while you will see many earthens eating this, you should be aware it is not food. So let's talk about getting around. Earthens employ a number of different types of communication methods, many of which can be seen in what they call signs that are posted around conventions. The languages can be complicated. There are symbols that can take some time to learn. It is important to acquire a battlefish before entering Earth. Otherwise, you might find yourself quite lost, and it is difficult to ask for directions without said battlefish. You know, I really apologize. This slide is in the wrong order. Let's go back to food. So you'll notice here that this particular item, though it is an animal, is not, is still alive. So do not eat it while it is still alive. It must be killed first. And second of all, though it doesn't look that different from most earthen animals, and this is a very subtle point, so you'll want to be careful about this, this technically would not be considered food by most earthens. The best way to make the difference while you're still getting used to the subtleties is to watch what other earthens are eating. Though again, watch out for things like Cool Whip, which are not food. So continuing the topic of food. Or actually, let's move on to costumes. So while this does appear to be similar to many earthen costumes. It has much of the similar materials. It is not a sufficient costume. Does anyone know why it's not a sufficient costume? Can I get?
It's only on his head.
Exactly, it's only on his head. So you can, whoops. So you can see here that this, while it does look like many earthens, does not look like the type of earthens you're likely to be interacting with. This is not a sufficient costume. In fact, using this costume, you might be mistaken for what they call pets, which will not be allowed to attend most conventions. Be sure to have a full body costume so that you can blend in with the hierarchically superior species, humans. More on that later. And by later, I mean the next seminar. I hope you're all coming to the next seminar. So, in summary, in order to get by inexpensively, it's important to go with friends or with other people who you can fool into thinking you're from Earth, and pay attention to what other earthens are eating. Though that may seem a little off topic to have spent so much time on costumes, it is important to understand the expense of not being careful with your costumery, because if you are not wearing the appropriate clothing, it can be very expensive to arrange for an extraction. So, I hope you all enjoyed this talk, and we'll continue on to the next seminar. I think we have a little bit of time. Are there any questions? Yes?
What is the best food for earthlings?
What is the best food for earthlings? That's a good question, and that will depend on the convention. Many conventions are held in hotels, which have something called a restaurant. If you go to the restaurant and make sure you have your battlefish ahead of time, you can read the menu and pick something from it. Try to pick something in the mid-range or the price range to make sure you get enough of it. Anything else? Yes?
So when an earthling dresses up as food, it is considered a pet? That is what I understood. I see.
Yes.
Appears to be a roach.
The answer